Hi, guys. Today's talk was prompted by one of my clients who's given me permission to use select portions of our sessions for this purpose. Should I leave her the laptop? He asks. Frank is in his late 20s, a bright young man, above average in looks. He's also neck deep in an abusive marriage, tethered to a woman who can flip the borderline switch at the drop of a hat. Objectively, she's ruined the marriage. Not that Frank doesn't have his role in matters, but plainly speaking, he is not inflicting the kind of terminal damage to the relationship's foundation that she has. It's the all too familiar pattern. What he does for the relationship is consistently demeaned. He is consistently demeaned. She's constantly after him to change, to be an improved version of himself, which in her estimation means being the man who does whatever she wants, when she wants him to do it, and without being told. A man with no needs and no life, save what is required to fulfill her wishes. And when he doesn't meet these impossibly insane expectations, she cuts him to pieces with her tongue. Like so many men in marriages, the messages of his inadequacy are constant, unyielding. Criticism and nagging are the only modes of communication in which she seems to be comfortable. And like so many marriages, his presence is required, but his needs and wants aren't. She ridicules and questions his friendships, mocks his interests, and charges that his attachment to those things are just proof of how little he cares about her. If he cared, after all, he would not let having a self get in the way of what she wants. And for icing on the cake, Frank is certain that he is on the road to being replaced. That when the opportunity avails itself to his wife, she will give him the boot. Of course, that would be immediately after her annexing all his possessions, including the fruits of his labor for years to come. The laptop is the very least of what she wants. All this, and Frank is still holding himself as an emotional hostage. Any move he makes, or even considers making, comes with a wheelbarrow full of guilt for what it might do to her. It's as though he has taken her opinion of him as a selfish, inconsiderate bastard and applied it brutally to his own self-perception. Frank, when confronted with his own needs, practices self-flagellation, self-recrimination, and self-reprisal. And yet at the same time, he has wisely decided that the abuse is too much. He's rightfully concerned about what living with that abuse is doing to him. He hates his life, and he may even hate his wife at this point. And he wants to leave, to start a new life that isn't as painful and isolating as this one. He wants to be free of all this misery. But he just can't figure out whether he should leave her the laptop. After all, if he takes that, that'll prove what he fears the most, that he is every bit the selfish monster she has painted him to be. For that matter, he might as well take all the food out of the fridge, right? And all the toilet paper, including what happens to be sitting there on the roll in the bathroom. If, in the end, Frank's wife has pegged him correctly, he should take all that and maybe have sex with her sister and kill the family pet on the way out, because that's exactly the kind of person she imagines he is. Only Frank isn't in the least what she thinks of him. In fact, he's quite the opposite. Sitting there in a highly abusive relationship with a woman who thinks abusing him is a sign of her good breeding, questioning whether he should be able to take his own laptop, whether he should take care of himself at all, now that he's finally had enough. If any of you out there think Frank is being a fool, I'd not be so quick to rush to judgment. In every way I can think of, he is just like most other men on the edge of divorce, desperately needing out, but acting like his own worst enemy in the process. You see, this scenario reveals one of the pitfalls of blue pill masculine programming. It is our inability to accept that all this crap, including the guilt, is just part of an eons-old rigged game. The fact is that Frank could leave $1 million on the table, bundled in neat stacks of 50s and 100s, and he would still feel guilty. He could offer to come back once a week to paint her toenails and fetch things for her, and he would still feel guilty. And she'd be happy to agree with him. But the problem isn't her. The problem is the programming, and if you can come to grips with that, you have much more appealing options than if you don't. To understand this better, we need to break down the breakup scenario. If you're a man, you've been programmed since birth to believe that all your failed relationships are your fault. It's the same way inside the relationship before it fails. Women complain, men take on the burden without ever questioning whether the complaints are valid. Men tend to think that everything is their fault. Women tend to agree with them to the point of rubbing their faces in it. When relationships fail, it's automatic for most men to believe that they have failed. It was because they did something too much or didn't do something enough. It's all part of the paradigm that men must do and men must perform. Everything hinges on us. From protecting women life and limb to making sure they have everything they need and feel attended to without them so much as having to ask for it. Almost all men in relationships will get these expectations reinforced by their women, save for those few who don't tolerate it from the beginning. All this stuff leaves Frank prone to surrender to an unconscious strategy, not to take care of himself at a major crossroads of his life, but to alleviate a bunch of unearned guilt, shortchanging himself in the process. As far as strategies go, it's piss poor. Correcting it, though, is simple, at least if we keep in mind that simple doesn't always mean easy. Simple, however, is simple. In this case, the simple answer is feel the guilt and take your fucking laptop. Now, it may help somewhat with the level of guilt if you remind yourself that all this guilt is just programmed bullshit. And there are other temporary measures for this, like reminding yourself that you didn't ask for any of this crap and that you were put in a position where leaving was necessary for your sanity. But it won't leave you guilt-free. The programming is just too strong. The only way to truly overcome this particular brand of blue pill guilt is by practicing over and over again the choice to take care of yourself over the choice to take care of a selfish, abusive woman. Do that enough and the guilt will largely be a thing of the past. But men don't find their way into these scenarios because they've been making lots of red pill choices in life like that. So, in the meantime, take your laptop. Take whatever else you need, which is yours. Make your departure from your marriage about allegiance to yourself. Understand that you are not just getting rid of her. You're getting rid of the you that puts up with women like her. If that feels shaky or awkward, all I can say is welcome to the club. Men taking care of themselves is always shaky and awkward because the world is hell-bent on shaming them for even the idea of doing such a thing. That's why I keep saying to men in this position over and over again that it is not her. It is so much bigger and more important than her. And you can be thankful to the stars that that's so. Neither she nor the world will ever give you permission to think of yourself, to practice healthy selfishness. For men, there is no such thing as healthy selfishness in the blue pill model. If you don't fight that, if you don't take responsibility for it full on, then you are turning down one of the most potent red pills that life will ever give you the opportunity to take. The greatest gift you will ever give yourself is embracing the idea that you matter, and that anyone who counts your sacrifice as something they are owed is the last person on earth for which you should suffer. The time is now to start living that truth, even if it feels like shaky ground. And oh yeah, Frank, don't forget the power supply in the case. And that is it for another talk, but a couple of important reminders before I close. One, below you will see a link to purchase tickets for ICMI 18 in London this July. It is heading toward being sold out, so if you want to attend the only Red Pill conference of its kind in the world and can be in London this summer, the time is now to get your seat secured. Also, a big thank you to all my supporters on Patreon and Maker Support. Links to those are also below. I have started weekly video meetings for my supporters, most of which are men only. Every Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time U.S., we gather there and talk about living red pill life in a blue pill world. It's really a lot of fun. Support in any amount on Patreon and Maker Support gets you in the door, and the meetings have proven to be really good. Nothing like connecting live to other red pill aficionados. With that, I hope you've enjoyed this talk, and as I like to say, even if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.